Hi, I'm IKEA, and for today's video, we're going to have a build showcase, although about a certain thing, which is the build collection, as that has been updated all the way. We're going to go actually through all of the builds in the build collection, not in this one video, as it kind of says in the title. This is just character one. So we're going to go through all 5 characters that show up on the build collection. And I thought of doing it this way, as we'll go through, and first I'll discuss what has changed since previous seasons to that build, which is in most cases weapon changes. Some builds, of course, have had significant changes. There are also some new additions, of course. And then we're also briefly going to just discuss what the build is and what the build does, which might be interesting for just in general for people to know, because there are a lot of builds. There is actually a lot of build variety in Division 2. You can go with a lot of things. Also in that section, I'm going to kind of briefly discuss how hard the build is to put together, and also, you know, if it has any super unicorns and stuff associated with it. That way as well, for newer players, if you see one of those pieces, you might be, you'll know what super unicorns actually see some use. And yeah, we'll go basically character by character. This will be on character 1 on the build collection, which is going to be loadouts of the build collection of 1.01 to 1.16, as that is actually how if you weren't aware, to give a brief introduction to it, to how the build collection is set up, which is that it is the first number is the character that it's on, and then it's the loadout slot. And that actually correlates 1-to-1 to my characters in game. So that's where they come from. We're also eventually going to actually do a video, which might be up if you're watching this in the future, about the build collection as its own thing, which will be a rambling talk. And we'll show some of the past as well of the build collection, as I have some old build pictures which look quite different, and we can kind of go into that. But if you are interested in that, and kind of also more explaining like how it's actually set up and how it kind of got started, that video will be coming in the future, or may already be out. But enough rambling. Let's not make it a rambling talk, as we're gonna actually do it as a build showcase. And let's go get started with character 1 here, and everything of course will be timestamped, so you can jump around. We'll timestamp it per build. Let's go get started with 1.01. And starting with 1.01, the very start of the build collection. This is a hotshot build, hotshot with chain killer and an Araldi backpack. We're gonna be short here, which is that the White Death especially came back as the best MMR overall, and we can kind of actually call this a best. We don't get to say best quite often, although I just said it 3 times in a row and lost all meaning. But usually there is multiple choices in most categories. The White Death, though, is overall the top pick, especially now as well. It has a very short reload, so actually with the amount of weapon handling that we have, the reload even isn't that bad anymore. That was just used to be the big issue with it. Now, as well, the M700 has higher base than it, but actually that doesn't matter in the end, because the first shot especially is much better on the White Death, which is usually the shot we care about. And actually on the cap shot, it is barely a difference. I mean, we're saying barely a difference. It's like 50k on like 30 million. So it is truly barely a difference. And that's, yeah, all due to, now, of course, the White Death having that extra headshot as its like named thing. So the White Deaths, and also decently easy to farm for, so we kind of go with that. Here, of course, as well, actually, I should add that in the corner, which is that we could go with Providence or Habsburg, Vigilance backpack, as the Araldi will add much more to the third shot, the cap shot, the capped shot. And headshot would add a lot more actually to the first shot, although when we say a lot more, it's barely any differences. That's also why I don't really care what's in this backpack slot, as long as it basically has vigilance, because yeah, vigilance helps a lot and makes sure that we can keep on having the first shot be able to murder a purple. So this is generally the setup that I go for, but you can definitely put a Providence, well, specifically a gift, especially here. If we kind of take it into the game, we can kind of see how it's actually saved for me, where I also have it with a custom M44. The custom M44 is one of the better magazine-based one, where we also have 10 rounds to kind of make Hotshot do its thing and reload it in, which basically means that you always reload it. But yeah, the white death is actually so quick, so much quicker now with the reload that it's not really an issue, especially because when you empty it out, you get the clip reload, which was already decently fast. And now a lot faster, and that's the thing. Like, if Hotshot doesn't reload it for you, then you get that, which is actually a decently fast reload. And then what this build is kind of for is especially 5 directive farming. This build can do that kind of like no other, although there are several that can kind of compete with it. But this, especially for control points and such, is a very easy go-to. It's also very easy to farm for. It is 4 pieces of Hotshot and a Chain Killer, which can be pretty easy to get. And you can go with many a backpack, as long as basically has Vigilance on it, like Providence or RLD, making for an easy build to farm for and a really good starting build. So that's also why I kind of wanted to push it to be at the very top of the build collection now as build 1.01. Let's go on to the next one. And on 1.02, the 0.02s on all my characters are strikers. It is basically a build that I kind of need on every character just to do incursions, for instance, with them, or just, you know, when we really need to go hard, or legendaries, for instance. You kind of just need a striker. And this is then the chest plus backpack striker. This is, of course, somewhat a little bit more situational. The obliterate striker is definitely, I would say, the general meta still, where we take an obliterate chest, a Coyote's Mask. This is then much more set up for places where there's continuous fights or long fights, or where you can stack up with the rock and roll starting up. And especially with this, with the chest strikers is where I do take rock and rolls. Here as well, taking a high-end weapon, although of course we're kind of showing a smorgasbord of weapon picks. And of course, actually, while I do have the FAMAS here, if we're going with a high-end, the Lexington is kind of the go-to now. The one reason I kind of like still sometimes do not run the FAMAS is actually that, like, I have I have 2 Lexingtons on my main account, in between 4 characters. Actually, although one I haven't taken out of the mailbox. I'm just keeping it there just for the looks. So I have 1 Lexington. Moving that across characters and stuff is much more of a hassle than me just grabbing the weapon that is on the build already. Here, of course, yeah, we're going with the Cheska as well. Nothing much changed about this build except, well, not even really weapons, because this was already with the FAMAS, although this used to be shown with the Elmo in the past. And yeah, if we actually take it in-game, you can kind of see that it is saved that way. Ungraded weapons here, that's continuously going to be the case. I actually have ungraded weapons on my characters, and then my graded weapons actually live in the stash, and I quite often forget to grab them. But I grade basically ones in the stash and grab those when needed, because yeah, I'm splitting them between 4 characters here on main account. On my second account and stuff, I actually run like the graded ones are the ones on the character. Here as well, I have a group of piece actually saved here. So usually as well, if I have an exotic in there, like a Coyote, the character is going to have a Coyote on them. As you can see, actually, this Coyote is not saved in any loadout on this character. So every loadout that shows it with a Coyote is generally, there is a different piece underneath there for when there is already enough Coyotes, and I get to just run this. As well, what I have actually on all characters, and that's kind of as well what I recommended on the build showcases and such, is to actually, I basically have all 6 pieces of striker on every character. And that makes it so that if I need to, or if I want to, I can just swap over to an obliterate on every character, or to different setups if I need to, maybe put in a contractors for an AR setup or something, but we can just make a general obliterate setup. And that is actually what I would recommend for running on characters. Just have all 6 pieces at the ready, and then you can basically swap in pieces as you need to. And yeah, this build is, of course, very easy to put together. This is generally the first build you would put together anyway. That's also why it's on the top of the recommended build list. It is very easy to get the parts for it. Whatever chest you kind of get with Obliterate is kind of fine. Whatever mask that is red is kind of fine to start out with. The big bonus comes from especially the Striker 4-piece. So basically, as you have 4 pieces of Strikers, you can kind of, as well, like when I started on my 3rd account, I basically just quickly put together 4 pieces of Striker and started being on challenging and then very quickly actually on heroic. So yeah, and this is definitely like one of the general meta builds. This, you kind of need one. And that's also why every character of mine, well, I try to just avoid having duplicates in general. They all have a Striker, although at least, yeah, I show them in different ways with Obliterate or with SMG setups or Bighorn setups or kind of like that. I kind of cheat that way and not have direct duplicates, but every character of mine has a Striker. Let's go on to the next one. And 1.03 is the Pestilence build. This is with 3 pieces of Langmo. This is a style that kind of already existed before now. But the Pestilence wasn't that great in the past. The Pestilence definitely has become a lot better. It has basically around the same base damage, but it has gained a lot of RPM. That has really bumped up its damage and its usability. I really like this build, and actually it's going to be the next build showcase. If you're watching this in the future, there will be likely already a build showcase of this on my channel. And this is with 3 pieces of Langmo with the backbone, and with the contractors and a fox. Nothing about this build really changed at all. Except that, yeah, that it got a lot better because of the Pestilence changes. Let's actually go look at it on the character, and you kind of see again that, yeah, I have a Grupo piece actually there. One thing I could put in here actually is a Walker and Harris piece for if there is other people, if I'm running this in a group. But generally, this is very much a solo build for me. So this piece could just basically be the Coyote at all times. One thing to make a note of here, because some people don't understand why I'm going for crit chance, crit damage with this, and that is that actually overall, this is my preferred pick for a Pestilence build. It isn't to make the Pestilence tick the highest, because then definitely things like a Sawyer would be could be a choice. Things like the new holster could be a choice. Putting Walker and Harris in here could be a choice. Putting DTA or something as the 3rd set, as this is with crit chance, because that's generally what I'm going to go for. Could be a choice, but you're giving up the build's DPS. What you have to kind of consider here is that at best, this thing is sticking for actually this is one sticking for 1.558, so 1.5 million. The build is doing into the tens, is doing basically an order of magnitude almost more than it. The build matters a lot more to me than the tick. I want the tick to be really high, but I'm not going to sacrifice everything for that. Although actually the sacrifice as the chest here would be a much easier choice, as going into how easy or hard this one is to put together. This one is using a super unicorn, which is this chest. You need to get a class chest with crit chance, crit damage to reroll the core, because this core is of course not going to be red. This is also using a backbone, crit chance, crit damage. This one is a little bit easier to get. Contractors and Fox, and this 3rd piece of Langmo. This still being a unicorn, of course, but not a super unicorn. This is definitely, especially because of the chest, a very annoying build to get together. And annoyingly as well, it doesn't have that much damage more than having a sacrifice in this slot, and basically having a Langmo piece in this slot, as we'll kind of go into the build showcase as well with it. This is definitely a little better, but it's just a little. But yeah, this is basically thinking about the build holistically and not just the tick. And trying to make the best build combination possible between the tick and the build itself. And for that, yeah, you need a ton of crit chance, crit damage to bring that up to the numbers that we have here, over 49.5 and 41, and then having the Coyote take us in mid ranges to being close enough to 60 that is kind of okay. Yeah, this build can actually be pretty nice. For solo play and such, the tick here is kind of high enough that it can kill. And once the tick can kill with being either close to fully stacked or fully stacked, it will spread around enemies and will just continuously keep refreshing, because every time that it kills an enemy and jumps, it will actually refresh its duration. And it's kind of nice for control points and such. It isn't a top build, but it is definitely an enjoyable build, and that's also why we're going to actually showcase it pretty soonish. Let's move on to the next. And continuing on to 1.04, which is the Eclipse on this character. Together with Strikers, each of my characters has an Eclipse. Again, kind of as with the Strikers, I'm showing them each in a different way on the build collection. That isn't exactly actually how I generally run them, and we'll kind of show that in a second. But this on this build, not much has changed. It has basically stayed the same. We're even keeping the Scorpio, even though the Scorpio, of course, got altered a little bit. It is still the top pick. Nothing can do what the Scorpio can do, especially for this build. We can still use it to stagger enemies, to get some minor status effects going, and kind of help our other status effects be applied by, for instance, that Poison will, of course, stagger reds and purples. The Disorient will stagger everything that isn't mechanical. Yeah, overall, not much has changed on this build. It's basically still the same as a glass as it always was. If we take it into the game, I can also show you that, yeah, it's kind of saved in that way. I generally, though, end up running it as with most of my Eclipses, and we'll kind of see that repeating pattern, is that usually I have a lefty at the ready. This is coming from a different build. But then again, as with the Strikers on this character, I actually have an Eclipse chest to make it a 5-piece, and then I have a golden piece here actually still from days gone by. Because this should, of course, yeah, if you're going for something, go for electric. But, you know, I like to kind of be cool. Although, of course, now as well, we could, although I don't have it, I don't think I have it on me, but the new knee pads, the snow machine, of course, could be a perfect fit here in as well. This is generally the Eclipse that I like running, which is just a baseline Eclipse, as I quite often call it. And all of my characters actually have the ability to go back to this. They have the pieces to actually just swap out to become this. But yeah, then all of them also kind of are saved as kind of a variant, for instance, on this character then as a glass Eclipse. Just to not have duplicates there, but also to, yeah, play around, because actually in Glass Eclipse is a very powerful one. It spreads a lot less. The spread range is, of course, tied to the chest talent. We have that. We don't have that here. But Glass, 25% more damage to everything, to the Val, to the fire ticks, to the bleed ticks, to the initial hits of the explosion, to the stinger hits. We can even, that's also why on this one, I'm kind of do have the Everlasting Gaze here. It's kind of in line with that, although I generally end up running a lefty anyway. And build-wise, yeah, Eclipses are pretty easy to put together. You kind of do need that Val. That Val is very much part of the deal. Kind of you need that for especially fire Eclipses, not so much if it's, of course, a foam Eclipse. The glass chest here actually, even though on the build collection I show it being an electric chest with glass, on the character itself I have a golden chest with glass, which is a super unicorn. I'm kind of keeping this on this character because it is a super unicorn and very hard to get, and I spend a lot of time to try and getting it, so I will keep it. But then yeah, actually on the build collection we show it as an electric piece, and just go for the electric piece. Don't try to be fancy unless you really want to be. I'm not gonna stop you. I'm not your real dad. You can do what you want. But yeah, let's go on to the next one. And 1.05, the explosive build. There are multiple versions. Actually, I should say of most builds that we've seen so far. There are multiple versions on the build collection. This is the explosive one that is harder hitting but harder to get, because we kind of need a unicorn, not per se a super unicorn. A sacrifice has a fixed talent, so we do need to get that to get this version. But then there is also in the build collection a 3-piece Empress version, which is much easier to put together. Both of them will use 2 pieces of Gruppo, of course, which are just unicorns, but still hard to get. This one as well uses a different unicorn, which is as well the Contractors. And yeah, this build overall can hit very hard. It is especially, of course, based around the mortar, basically. When we're kind of talking explosive skills, we're either going with the Seekers with the Seeker spam, or we're kind of going this way, which is the mortar way. And the mortar way, I would definitely say, is generally more effective until recently when Hardwired got a really big buff, of course. Overall, on this build, nothing really changed. We do get more out of the Grupo 2-piece. The Wyvern, of course, is actually less skill damage, but the Grupo 2-piece is now 20 explosive damage. That actually did mean that overall the numbers went up a tiny bit, and it is just a tiny bit. If we kind of take this into the game, going to see again that, yeah, this one's kind of saved. We saw it there with the capacitor. I was definitely generally would run the capacitor. I do run this with the in-sync shotgun. The reason for that is just that I can poke out, tap once, and just get in-sync going, which is kind of, you know, in line with trying to throw a hive around and mortar stuff. And yeah, as we kind of were discussing, this version of it, although the other version, which is on character 5, so it's 5 point something, or a second account basically, that one is much easier to put together with 3 pieces of Empress. This one, yeah, has basically a unicorn here, a unicorn here, a unicorn here, because both of those group of pieces are kind of unicorns, and even a skill damage, because you do need to record this. We're not using Technician to make up for any deficiencies with the cores, because we kind of need that for the mortar. We need Demo for the mortar there, and also, of course, Demo applying 10 explosive damage here as well. But yeah, this one is also sometimes hard to get. Although, of course, if you have the crafting, blueprints for them from Descent, that can help a lot. And overall, this is a decently annoying build to get together. This one, the other one with just the 2 pieces of Grupo and a 3-piece Empress is much easier to get together. So if you're looking for starting out with an explosive build, that might be a go-to. Or the Seeker, which is on character 2, which we'll get to in the future. Explosive builds are still decently good. This used to be my go-to for Hollywood, especially. Hollywood, of course, has kind of changed. I don't end up using these much, but just sometimes, once in a while, I feel like just pulling these out. And they are actually, as far as skill builds kind of go, very effective. And definitely, if you're in that sphere of enjoying some skill builds here and there, these are definitely worth having. This one, though, yeah, it does take a little bit more work. So maybe start out with the Empress one and then maybe work up your way to this later on if you really enjoy that build. Yeah, let's go on to the next one. As for 1.06, we come to the very cleverly named, of course, Oxi Moron. Because we kind of had to. And on this build as well, not much has changed for this season. Empress, of course, took a little bit of a hit of 2 skill efficiency at the 3-piece. Wyvern got a little bit of a hit. So both of those actually went down. Overall, the weapon or the damage went down, although actually I went up in grading, so my damage actually went up versus the previous version of this, but that was just only due to the grading being higher now. And yeah, this is still very usable. It is, of course, situationally the thing that we kind of go for dealing with certain things. So, for instance, as we actually, let's go into the game first. As we're going to have on the side there as well, just to point that out, is that using something like Glory Days, all of these talents, the talents bonuses will actually apply to held chem. So for instance, here we can use this to improve our chem's stability so that we don't have any basically that movement that you have where it's kind of like just bobs and weaves. We can actually use that if you were wondering for that. That's also why the chatterbox is actually on the build picture, is that you can use that for the rate of fire and get chems out a lot faster. Same, for instance, actually technically with the invisible hand, but 15% isn't that much. It's like really much more when you just do it 100% with like a chatterbox, or 125% even. And yeah, this build for putting together isn't per se that hard. You still need actually one kind of these unicorns, which is either a Contractor's or a Fox's Prayer. With you get to keep one red cord because we have Technician, but one of them needs to be record and have skill damage basically. They aren't incredibly rare. You can definitely farm for them. For the rest of it, it's actually pretty easy pieces with some Empress and some Wyvern. This backpack talent, of course, I would definitely make sure that you can free talent this backpack talent, because you swap quite a bit between tech support and combined arms. That is my two picks for it quite often. And here as well, of course, we're going with a shotgun for that damage to armor and detox, both applying to the Oxi, being one of the few skills that actually benefits from that. And this is very much a tool for certain situations. So there is, for instance, doing the Summit Floor 100 hunters. There is things you can do with 3 of these and a foamer, somebody foaming, keeping them in place, 3 people spamming out Oxys and just melting them. Same, for instance, in some capital or the capital farm that we're going to have, on which I might do actually a video because it's not that well known. But yeah, situationally, this can do things that no other build can, which is basically what we have on that build picture as well in the corner of just going, actually just hitting everything and dealing damage to everything, which can outdo basically any other build in certain situations. And for those situations, you sometimes need a build like this. I wouldn't say this is like a build that you must have, but especially as you get deeper into the game, you might want to have one of these laying around for certain situations. Yeah, let's move on to the next. 1.07, the Negotiator TurDro Hybrid, as I kind of call, basically capacitor-based, somewhat weapon damage based turret drone hybrids. I call them TurDros, just kind of as my collection name for them. This build as a setup, not much has changed for it. We're getting a bigger, we got an increase basically to the backpack. That's also why on this Negotiator, because we do have other TurDro hybrids, specifically high-end and strikers, where I do actually take the Memento as the main build picture, which we have here as like an option, and we can have like then an Negotiator mask, and then basically swapping these 2 slots around to have a Memento here and a piece of Negotiator there. On this one, though, especially with the increase to the backpack, I do feel this has some purpose in this way. We are, of course, our skills are, without the Memento especially, they're pretty weak, but they can still kill reds and purples quite consistently. They can also be basically harassers for us. Overall, this build got a tiny buff, basically. If we take it into the game, we can actually see that this, just to show as well, there are actually a bunch of builds that are saved of mine this way with 5 pieces. And you might go, why would you have 5 pieces? And that's exactly as what we're talking about. I can either put in a Coyote, and then this becomes basically what we had on the build picture. But also, I can, of course, as I have it set up here, have a Memento. And I have actually multiple Mementos on my characters. One with the crit chance mod, one with the crit damage mod as needed. I think this one takes the crit damage mod. No, it takes the crit chance mod. That way, we can just... I can have both versions at the ready, because the exotics are going to be in my inventory anyway. So we're saving it as a 5-piece. I do that actually with a lot of builds. The chest here, for instance, I definitely always want to go with glass anyway, so this sacrifice is going to be there. And yeah, this build is kind of annoying to get together as you have to recore several pieces with Negotiator. So that means that, yeah, you do have to spend a little bit here on optimizations. But it isn't too horrible as well. If you don't want, if you use the Coyote version, you do need a sacrifice that you need to recore. If you actually use the Memento version, this yellow core could of course be on the mask. But then if you're really doing it in the same way as I'm kind of doing there with the 5 pieces, yeah, you kind of need that mask there because of course the Coyote would not be able to have the yellow core, a Memento can. So actually the Memento version is much easier as well to put together, so that's maybe something to consider. And I kind of like TurDro hybrids, especially for instance solo play and stuff. Especially in the past, they could compete with glass reds. They don't really compete against the newer Heartbreakers, Strikers, Umbras, and such of the world. But against glass reds, they could definitely compete in the past. And even solo, for instance, having the firepower, because I was always pretty consistently running glass, so I'm going to use the glass from in the past. But I found these actually to be overall an improvement, especially for solo play, because I still have enough firepower to murder, and then I have basically 2 very strong decoys. These things will pull things off of me pretty consistently, and that's kind of also the reason why I kind of like this build. You kind of have the turret and drone being harassers in the front, and you get to focus on doing negotiator things, and you negotiate your way to victory, hopefully. And yeah, this setup was, of course, very much, all of these builds kind of became actually usable when the capacitor really came in, because before this we would use the InSync. InSync will definitely lose to capacitor in this setup, where we have 6 yellow cores as well. And yeah, overall, these aren't per se builds that I would recommend outright. There's pretty low on the recommended build list, but definitely if you're into using turret and drone, because keep in mind that actually a lot of people go like, you know, turret and drone, they're kind of boring and stuff. Honestly, I find when you're doing it like this, especially when you're hybridizing them. Now I'm doing all of the things of a red build with the gun, and then I'm also keeping track of a turret and drone. And actually that's kind of enjoyable. That gives you, it makes it a lot more intense actually as you're going through. Definitely a recommendation to the kind of person that is into, you know, making things a little bit more complex for themselves, and also, yeah, it's kind of just having buddies around. Yeah, let's go on to the next. Next up is a 1.08, the CombatMedic, a much loved build overall, as I quite often actually hear people that they have tried versions of the CombatMedic, although usually nowadays more the striker versions out, and that they quite enjoy them. This is the genesis of those, which is a high-end version. This one still as well has some benefits over the striker one, especially in the amount that it heals, but not so much in actually its its actual usability. I would definitely recommend the striker ones over this one. Which I do as well in the recommended build list. Overall, for this build, not much to change. There was some choice making to be done with Picaros, as of course Picaros did get a little bit of a nerf, but it turns out that actually in places where you're using 2 pieces Brazos and then one of the pieces being Picaros, the Picaros still kind of just works out to be overall one of the better picks. That 10 weapon damage is still worthwhile. You could, of course, go, or we could try to go with, for instance, just 2 pieces of Brazos, but that actually loses out to the Picaros overall. So in a lot of builds, especially if the capacitor is involved, or if they are around going for 6 skill tiers, which this, for instance, is, of course, going for 6 skill tiers on the skills, turns out that, yeah, the Picaros plus a second piece Brazos still wins, although not by as much as it used to. So yeah, you could definitely go, for instance, in this case, for 2-piece Providence or such, to boost up, for instance, crit chance even more. Yeah, these builds are kind of somewhat harder to put together, as we'll take it into the game. As we're recoring a bunch of red stuff, and while the Picaros isn't too hard to get, recoring a Brazos, which comes with the blue core, this is definitely a unicorn. And we kind of see that as well in the optimizations that it kind of needs. Same as well, we're recoring, at least here, for instance, a Grupo piece. Although it's not as bad anymore as it used to be. One thing I do like as well about keeping the Brazos pieces, even though if we actually put, like, for instance, headshot to 0, going 2 pieces Providence actually does win here. Keeping the Brazos pieces, we get to keep normal chests and backpack, basically, because I'm just reusing a Cheska chest that is from a different builds, or used in different builds. Here, a Fenris backpack, though, that I'm not per se using, but this could be the Grupo here and a Fenris there. We get to reuse kind of just red core pieces, and that will come into play, especially later on with some of the later high-ends where we're kind of using gifts and sacrifices and such, and we get to keep them all red, which is kind of nice. And then, yeah, these are, of course, all aligned around the capacitor as well, kind of like the TurDro Hybrids. Of note, actually, so I have the M16 here, or the Mark 16 here, as my secondary. The Mark 16 is definitely no longer a weapon worth using, but this one has sentimental value to me, just to say that as well. This was the very first weapon that I ever got that was a fully god roll with Detox that we could free talent, and this is pre-optimization days, so this was actually pretty rare, and this weapon has stuck with me for quite a while, so we're kind of keeping it around, especially on this character where it got used the most. Overall, CombatMedics are kind of really nice for seasons where no regen is on, which is for instance, this season. You can run these, although I would say maybe more the Striker than this one, which has a lot more firepower than this, a lot less healing, but you don't need this amount of healing as well. And what it has is that, yeah, you can kind of use it to negate no regen, because, of course, out of combat regen goes away, nor does like Memento or such give you regen, or regen stats give you regen. So you can use this to top people up on their health and armor, or well, their armor specifically. And that's still enough firepower that you're not completely going the route of, like, for instance, putting an FI in the team, which can heal way a lot, but actually a little bit too much. And then you're kind of not having this damage. This basically does healing and damage, where, for instance, yeah, an FI does healing and a buff. And I find having a fourth person, especially in 4-man teams, to be able to do damage, to effectively do damage, is actually much more useful than having one person kind of be kind of useless and just buffing and healing. And also a lot more fun for that person doing that role, because as with the third drone, actually, this is kind of a mentally taxing build to run for long times, because I'm kind of doing the full shooty thing as much as I would with any red build. And then together with that, I'm trying to heal people up. Yeah, let's move on to the next one. As next up is 1.09, an FI that is a hazard protected, overall 60%, and then with 3 mods in there as well, with 90% disrupt resist. Of course, we're not 100% disrupt resistance. We could try to do such a thing. For instance, though, we would need either a different backpack for that, either a YAL or something, or we could go without the BTSU. But I kind of like going with the Hermano as we have it here, or the setup. And the Hermano is actually really good nowadays. And what this is, of course, is really for, as kind of bearing the lead, is Countdown, where there is a lot of disruption going around, although situationally in other places where there's also some disruption. This is kind of inspired by the hazard protected Eclipse, which is a very popular build for in Countdown. But there, of course, we can reach 100 pretty easily. Against disrupt specifically. We don't get to have that with the FI because, of course, one of the brand or one of the gear set bonuses of Eclipse is hazard protection. We don't have that here. But 90% means that we do actually, if we get jammed, generally it's for a second or a second and a half at most, kind of. So you do get your skills back pretty quickly. I've been using this quite a bit. I've been enjoying it. And yeah, as we kind of said, FI kind of does, of course, do the healing and then the buffing together. Doesn't per se do its own damage much. If we take it in-game, what we have here is, yeah, saved kind of exactly as it is on the build picture. This is, of course, though, a pretty easy build to get together. We're keeping the yellow cores on the FI. We're going, just spitting hazard protection there. BDSU is kind of needed here. BTSU, of course, a very powerful tool, so you kind of want to have it. Hermano, as we have it here, drops a lot. Is one of those names that just drops. If you are set to Brazos, you will see dozens of them. You would need the hazard protection here, so and also, yeah, we would want to recore it. It's from blue to yellow, so here it is kind of nice to, yeah, it is kind of a unicorny, but it's not the one that is really hard to get. What I have on this character as well is actually, I do have that setup backpack as I have it on the build picture at the ready as well. Because situationally, you would want one or the other. I actually like running opportunistic for like basically most of the Countdown, and then especially extraction running the Hermano. But especially on, the hunters at the start, I would definitely pick the setup over it. And yeah, this is what this build basically is for, is, yeah, exactly as we said, on Countdown, to be there to heal a little bit. And it is still more than enough, because our initial burst of the chem is still more than enough to heal up a full red in one hit. Our hives is still decent enough, and especially our hive, of course, as well, getting a haste from the BTSU. So it's that will work fine enough. The chem does actually run out pretty quick if you're not watching out for that. And then we're either providing some reload speeds and skill haste to our allies, or we're applying opportunistics perfectly upon enemies, getting them some bad damage bonuses. That's also why we're going here with Survivalist, both for the healing a little bit, but also for the flame grenades, for even more sledges and such. Although, of course, sledge did get a reduction, so it's a lot less powerful than it used to be, but it went from like super overpowered to still overpowered. It's still well worth having in your setups. And yeah, this is definitely a build. If you run a lot of countdown and you're looking for a little bit something else, yeah, definitely one to kind of consider. But I would do this definitely after having, for instance, an hazard protected Eclipse, which is overall, I would say, a little bit more useful than this. As we arrive at 110, the very cleverly named V for Vestilence, Virtuoso for the Pestilence. As with all seasons, I usually do add in to the build collection of that season the gear set. I do like running the thing, at least understanding it. That's usually how at least I feel you should go about it. Just not just go off the numbers and you, run it. Numbers wise, Virtuoso does not make that much sense. But I do kind of enjoy it for trying to do the thing that it can do, which is to like kill short, kill long, kill short, kill long, and then get a big buff. Trying to get that going and such is actually, yeah, I kind of enjoy playing towards that playstyle. But then, yeah, this isn't a build that, yeah, for instance, would make it to the recommended build list. Here I've gone with Sacrifice plus Gift. The chest is definitely usable kind of on the Virtuoso to kind of do almost a build showcase of it. And we could use the chest, especially to get in the Centurion holster. I don't have this holster in the build collection at all until we kind of really know what the final form of it will be, because of course currently you can apply both bonuses onto one weapon, which definitely doesn't seem intended, and also it reloads your weapon when swapping, which also doesn't seem intended. But Virtuoso here for Pestilence kind of makes sense. We have weapon damage coming off of the gear sets. It's one of the very few gear sets where we can get weapon damage and then also apply it to the Pestilence, because for instance, yeah, Breaking Point has weapon damage and stuff. But that wouldn't apply to the Vestilence because it's not a rifle. Of course, Strikers famously says that it is total weapon damage, which would apply to the Vestilence, but it isn't. It's a separate multiplier. This is one of the few gear sets where we do have actually weapon damage coming off of this, and that does apply to the Pestilence. And we can kind of see that in the tick as well. As I kind of lean out of the way. This has a tick of 1.45 with everything triggered. That's the thing with it. It can make for a cool, you know, clickbaity big number compared to, for instance, the Langmo build as we had it before with the same 25 grading on the Pestilence. That does 1.55. This does 1.45. Decently close, you would say, right? You know, we're getting there. That one does it pretty consistently. This one requires you, as we were kind of saying, a close range kill, a far range kill, or the other way around, and then also another time. And that is kind of a little bit of a hassle. Definitely, I feel the Pestilence is kind of the fit for it. If we take it into game, we actually have that exact layout here. I don't have the Lexington as a secondary here, but I would definitely pair it with an AR. The Lexington would be the choice, but of course it gets grabbed out of the stash if and when I need it. Yeah, this build is of course very easy-ish to put together. It kind of depends on, the gift would of course be a DZ item. That's kind of harder to get, but you could go just Cheska, Grupo. I would recommend going Glass. Sacrifice plus Cheska could be here. Sacrifice plus Second Piece Providence, just a normal piece with Vigilance on the backpack, or Unstoppable Force. We don't really have a good way of going for 3-piece Langmo, unless going Ninja Bike, but yeah, that just doesn't work out. Giving up this backpack talent is too big of a loss, especially if we're going for Pestilence anyway. Overall, this is an okay-ish build, easy enough to get together. And only really worth it if you're wanting to do the thing of it, which is, getting that long range kill, short range kill, or, well, past 25, under 25, which isn't per se short range. This is basically mid range as well. But yeah, you need to basically tick-tock these. You need to get one in this range, one in the other range, back into this range, back into that other range, depending on to get this big bonus, which is also at a 1.5. It says here 2, but actually the patch notes and stuff does correctly say 1.5. So they need to fix that up. But that's still like, yeah, not... Striker goes birth. This doesn't. Striker does more damage than this with less hassle. But situationally, I like having these kind of builds, also just to understand them and then just also to run them and just feel kind of how it feels and mess around with them. This might see some revisions as we go through the season, as we might try to put a Centurion in here or something. But for now, this is the version as it is on the collection. And on to 111, which here is HeadHunterFury, as we're taking Hunter's Fury, 4 pieces of it, slapping together with a Regulus here specifically. Regulus, really good with this setup. This is very much, of course, one of the meta builds of the game. Not much changed with this. Nothing really changed with this. Some stats, of course, for the Regulus changed. Regulus is feeling a lot more sluggish with its reload, being a lot higher than it used to be. But honestly, it was also a deserved change, I feel. Build-wise, though, nothing here changed. I've even basically kept the double shotgun setup here. Although, of course, an 1886 is definitely a pick for this. I should actually maybe add that as an optional item. If you don't have the Regulus, yeah, we have the Harvest, we have the Police Harvest Preferred, and then otherwise a Police 686 or law as well. 586 is the exact same weapon type, basically, so either or there. If we take it into game, you actually see that there is a little bit a difference here. As we had there, we had the Chain Killer plus DNH backpack. I have 2 pieces DNH here. That is, of course, again, kind of set up in that way, where I do have the Chain Killer, of course, from the hotshot build on this character, so I could always slap that in, and that turns it into what the build picture was. The reason it is actually saved with with 2 DNH pieces here is that I can also slap in a Memento, which was, of course, the alternate version that we kind of showed there as well in the corner, you know, where we can go actually as well. Yeah, Dutch City plus the Hunter's Fury backpack and Memento or Memento with the DNH chest. That's also why it's saved that way, of course. I like doing that quite a bit because here as well, we do actually even have the Hunter's Fury backpack here. And of course, I have a Dutch City also add already. So I can basically go all 3 versions. And all 3 versions do have benefits, definitely, in certain situations. Having the Dutch City, if you need that, like one starting shot, quite hard. The Memento version, of course, gives you a much better shield, lets you have a lot more survivability. Solo actually feels really nice. And then if we're going all out, Chain Killer plus DNH is kind of the go-to. All of them are decently easy to farm. The DNH, of course, Dutch City is pretty easily doable from its project. Memento is somewhat easy to get overall. The DNH pieces, the chest is craftable, so you can go with that, although as well, not too hard to farm overall anyway. And this is a build that, especially if you are into headhunting, especially in the kind of like the core versions of it, as we'll go to this. If you can get a Regulus, although of course a Regulus isn't too hard to get nowadays, you can sign up for raid carries and such, and just get it done basically once and then have it. Although, well, you would need to do it over multiple weeks, multiple times. Iron Horse to get this. And it's well worth getting. But if you don't, yeah, you can go, as I here have on this character as well. I have a Harvest at the ready with Determined. And of course, with Determined, this kind of completely plays differently. The Regulus can do a complete wave clear. The Harvest here, we can go much more just farming. And yeah, this is definitely one of the S tier builds. I don't per se have, for instance, a pistol headhunter on every character, but I actually do have a headhunter that can go Determined basically on every character in different ways. And for instance, yeah, I do also have a high-end version, of course, on character 4, and then I have like another characters that have more sniper versions. It's definitely worth having, and this, of course, as well deals really well with Pistolero, with 5 directives for open world farming, especially activities and such. One of the great go-tos, so definitely worth putting together. and we come to 112, which is Backfire on Strikers. We also use this one actually in the SMG compare, the big table, where we had the hazard protection version. This is that build. And what this has, of course, is that we're going for hazard protection enough for the Backfire. The Backfire, of course, got changed with this season. We're now only going to 100 stacks, but each stack is worth 2 instead of the 1 that it was for 200 in the past. We're keeping basically 200 crit damage. That's staying the same. We just now need 100 stacks instead of 200 to get there, which is a big improvement to it. It still drops off after that, those 10 seconds. That is still kind of annoying. But now, especially as well, Cheska got changed for the 2-piece to be 20% crit chance versus the old 10% that it had as the 2-piece. So what we used to have actually in this setup was a Cheska piece and a Sokolov piece, not even going with either Yao or some such. That worked out fine because actually having the mods be bleed resistance and then Cheska plus Sokolov actually worked out to be more damage than going for instance with Cheska and Yao, for instance, or Cheska and a second piece, or Sokolov and Yao, or any of those combinations, and then having the mods be crit damages. It turns out that, but yeah, that was the old version. In this newer version, of course, yeah, we can go with 2-piece Cheska, get that 20% crit or 10% crit chance, or well, 8 actually, of course, I got nerfed. And then 20% hazard protection from 2-piece. And then we get just 1 mod needed because this is 90% all round hazard protected and 100% bleed resistant. You do need 95 to make up for the Backfire. There's, of course, lists out there where it says 93 point something. That is only from enemy sources. This isn't an enemy source. The Backfire is, well, I mean, it's a frenemy at best. And yeah, you need 95. Basically, you need to reduce the 20 seconds to 0.5 seconds, which, yeah, you need 95% resistance for that. Here we have it as well with the chest as well as an option. If we take it actually into the game, we kind of see, I kind of as well have that chest actually here together with that mask as needed. So we can swap between chest version and not. And there's definitely some value there to the chest version, especially then you would kind of stack strikers up to 100 with the ACS and then take the rest of the way with this. And actually that can work even for something like raid or incursion fights like Right or such. You can kind of get that done. And of course, yeah, you can stack up. It is on hit, so yeah, it does stack up the same way that Striker does on immune enemies. But in general use, I would go the Obliterate route, and then you can have 100 stacks of Strikers and 100 stacks of the Backfire. And now it being 100 stacks, it works decently well. You can reach to 100 stacks. You, in the past, generally wouldn't reach 200 stacks. To make the build, it is pretty easy. It is Striker pieces that have been made to have hazard protection, red core. We're keeping the red cores here as well. We're with the Cheska pieces. The chest can be kind of an annoyance and might cost you a little bit if you're going with that. There might also be a reason to go with the Striker chest, because then it's actually a little bit easier, of course, because then you're with the other parts, if it's the mask or if it's the holster, you just get a crit damage or a crit chance holster, and then put hazard protection next to it, because also mod-wise, you kind of have to have a crit chance mod, or well, you need 1 crit chance somewhere, so you can have a crit chance somewhere and then put a crit damage one instead. Overall, this build does have some utility, especially because it's mostly hazard immune, and because of that, can work pretty well, especially, for instance, if you have special ammo on, because, you know, if we're going up against True Sons or Rikers that bleed, they don't anymore with their special ammo. And even the other things like burn and such are very short durations and barely are noticeable. You will definitely, yeah. You still can't get hit as much. It is a red build. It is a full red build, so you have to kind of be cognizant of that. But yeah, if you are, it can help a lot. And of course, with the modifiers, close range being burn and long range being disorient on some of the enemies, and in the past being shock, actually it was kind of very useful to run this. But still, actually, well, it still even is. And I find myself actually grabbing this here and there, even for countdown, where, yeah, we're not getting disabled for as long, and as on a high can actually pick us up pretty consistently. And because of that, we can be pretty aggressive with it, especially during extraction. And on to 113, the first of the tech tanks, although not one of the better of the tech tanks. This is HeadHunterFury tech tank, one that I still keep hanging on around. It has some uses, especially with no regen, but overall, yeah, I end up not enjoying this one as much as some of the other versions. Changes wise, what really only changed is that, yeah, Cheska got a reduction, of course, so we kind of are making up for that. And then as well, weapons-wise, this used to be with an Oreo. That no longer is the case. I'm definitely going with attack vector here with Killer. Going with a high-end as well, we get to have a Scorpio secondary, and Scorpio is actually really nice, of course. That's one of the nice things about high-ends being a little bit more, for instance, on the SMG end. Viable again, or well, actually the Oreo kind of being nerfed. Yeah, we get to have Scorpios alongside of them. This, of course, when we're fighting one enemy, is really worthwhile. Yeah, overall as well, this build is not too hard to put together. We do need to recore. Of course, this comes at HeadHunterFury drops at red cores. Here we are recording 3 of them, but that's not too hard because yeah, we do need secondary red stats, so those drop quite frequently. It does, yeah, require a little bit of optimization here and there, of course, when that is the case, as we kind of see as well. The holster is done that way. If we actually go into the game, you see that I still actually have the Oreo here. I could, of course, have gone and grabbed attack vector from the stash, but just as well to show, I'm still as well in the process of upgrading all of my weapons and stuff. And yeah, this character doesn't have an attack vector yet. Actually, they have no other SMGs except the 3 exotics, and then this AUG that also needs to be replaced. Because yeah, this AUG, we could go with a flatline weapon, but we definitely wouldn't pick an AUG for that anymore. We would pick a Vector 45. That's also likely how I'm going to save this, with a Vector 45 with flatline and an attack vector with Killer. And then I can slap in, and one of the 2 becomes basically the Scorpio slot. And yeah, this build, as we kind of talked about, isn't that hard to get together. The Cheska chest, you do kind of want to have the Cheska here, but then this isn't craftable, of course. Grupo would be. This is kind of requires some farming, and then usually requires a little bit of optimization. But yeah, if you just get Obliterate and then one of the stats, that's kind of fine. But you kind of want to go for free talentable, of course. Memento isn't that hard to get. And yeah, this build, tech tanks, if you're not aware, are generally my go-to for solo play. I kind of like this very much, as well as what they are is a very strong shield that you can kind of hide behind. This is a 6-tier shield getting healed by this 3-tier or 2-tier artificer here for 33%, although once the memento is fully charged, 42% every 10 seconds. So we're getting basically 2, and then this is also higher when the memento is charged up. So we're kind of getting around 200k-ish per second, 2 million-ish per 10 seconds back there. And yeah, no regen build can kind of compete with that. And then we're putting the rest of it towards damage. And they're a repeating pattern. We'll see multiple tech tanks through the build collection. This one is not one that I would per se recommend. The Heartbreaker and the Striker are definitely ones that I definitely would. This one is a little bit more situational, but actually with no regen for this season. The armor on kill that this has, because we don't, of course, get the regen anymore, even in combat from the memento. So this having the armor on kill actually makes it that we can take that directive and kind of still be fine. So it has some value there, but yeah, I definitely wouldn't like be my top pick to make as the first tech tank. But overall, still pretty workable. But also as well, actually, like just a normal HeadHunterFury would do 90% of this, and actually overall do it a little bit better. That's why I kind of feel this is kind of overkill when it comes to tech tanking it, because HeadHunterFury doesn't per se need it. Just a memento version would kind of work already. So I'm not the biggest fan of this, but yeah, it has stuck around for quite a long while in the build collection. Because yeah, it does do some things that the others don't. But yeah, I would recommend tech tank wise some of the other ones, and HeadHunterFury wise, I would just recommend just a normal HeadHunterFury and just running that with SMG. And on to 1.14, which is another tech tank. This character has 2 tech tanks. That does happen to some of them. This is the high-end one. Again, as we kind of discussed a second ago, I very much prefer the Heartbreaker and the Striker and as we were saying there, and yeah, you might have noticed the high-end one wasn't in that list. The high-end one is kind of okay. It's very much set up to be actually, instead of most of the other TechTanks, to be 3 tiers of yellow and then 3 tiers of blue. Instead of 2 and 4, and that's done by the Picaros and the 2nd piece Brazos. So it does heal a little bit more on the shield, while the shield is just as strong. Of course, the character behind it is a little bit weaker with 1 less blue core. And this was also set up to be workable very much with the capacitor. It really works well because of the capacitor and its ability to recoup some of that yellow into reds, basically. We could actually go a different route and kind of land around the same numbers, and that is just basically dropping the Picaros, because of course, change-wise, yeah, the Grupo got hit, the Cheska got hit a little bit, but Picaros definitely got hit as well, taking this 15 weapon damage that it had to 10. We could go actually here, in this case, with Grupo Cheska, Fenris, and Contractors. So, well, Fenris here then, and then Contractors there. And with it, and then not go with the capacitor, and we would kind of land around the same numbers, basically, if we went then with another blue core to make up for the blue core that we lose. But I'm kind of keeping this with the capacitor. This one has kind of a unique trait where it heals a little bit more than the other tech tanks for the same amount of shield. So we're kind of keeping it this way. And this actually does, for the capacitor, this is definitely the way to go. The Picaros plus Brazos bonus, if you're going the 2-piece, is still workable as long as it's basically a capacitor in play. This thing is decent. It definitely kind of pales in comparison to the Heartbreaker or the TechTank, or the Heartbreaker or the Striker TechTank. But I like keeping it around. Although I might actually alter this, and this might, in the future, become an slot that will become an bulwark-based TechTank, a pistol one, again, basically, for doing 8 directive summit or 9 directive summits. So yeah, that might change in the future. But for now, yeah, it is basically as it is in its build picture. It is decently easy to put together because we're actually keeping the blue cores on the Brazos pieces here, even though this one is recored. Unnecessarily so. And then we're basically leaving a Grupo and a Cheska and a Fox's Prayer, just all red with a Memento and a Capacitor. Capacitor is, of course, very easy to get from the Summit. This is basically a starter weapon that everybody could really easily get. That does make it easy enough to farm, somewhat easier than some of the tech tanks, although Heartbreaker is also pretty easy. You need 1 piece to only recore. And what the strength, of course, of the tech tanks are, to say that again for this one, is that is my preferred type to run solo. So generally, this character I do a bunch of solo stuff with, because usually with the new scouts that come out or something, this is usually the character I run them on. And usually I end up running this, even though I would much prefer to have like a Striker tech tank or a Heartbreaker tech tank. This is kind of the tech tank that they have, so we just run this. But it's more than good enough for especially heroic solo content and such. And yeah, as play-wise, it's basically a claymore. It is a front towards enemy at all times. Let the shield take all the hits. You're behind there, regenning and shooting and you know, having enough damage behind it as well to kill fast-ish enough. Of course, not a full red, so it definitely gives up some damage for survivability. But I feel this is the best balance between outgoing damage and incoming survivability, basically, that we can have as a style of build, but then, yeah, specifically the Heartbreaker or the Striker one, to give that caveat in. Yeah, let's move on to the next. 115. This one is a build that has kind of survived just for kind of somewhat nostalgia's sake. I used to DZ quite a bit and such. I don't do so much anymore. This is very much a DZ build. Changes-wise, not much has changed about it. We are going, this one though is, yeah, we used to have 1-piece Picaros here. It turns out the 1-piece Picaros, if you're not going for the Brazos 2-piece basically bonus, not per se worth it anymore unless you crit-wise can kind of make it work, make sense. But yeah, here it's been replaced with a Grupo holster with Armor Core. Especially as well, we can now always go with high-end weapons where we can put 20 crit damage, 5 crit chance on them. In the past, of course, yeah, we wouldn't use crit damage mods, right? So here now we can land on a kind of like really nice looking 60 with this setup for the attack vector. And yeah, overall, yeah, that Scorpio secondary, even it's not that useful. We just I needed to put something there. Basically, we're maining this weapon very hard here. But yeah, changes wise as well, Catharsis got a little bit of a buff, and then is of course as well decently okay for DZ fights. We could situationally go Coyote, of course, especially if we're taking this into conflict, where it would drop to 50, basically. We can use the Coyote, although, well, our Coyote would like to be at short range, but somebody else's Coyote might be at mid-range. If we take it into the game, we can say actually that as with the last one, also kind of to convey that, yeah, I'm still not done actually swapping out all of my weapons and such. I'm still farming here and there for some weapons, and yeah, this again is a slot where the attack vector is going to go in. For now, though, it used to be an Oreo build. The Oreo is still there. It would still work out, although actually the way that I've set it up now, the 10 crit chance that is fixed on the Oreo would no longer actually work well here, because we're at 65 crit chance. So I definitely, like, if I'm gonna run this, which is unlikely for the foreseeable future until I have that weapon anyway, I would grab just something from the stash. Making this build wise though, recording, like, yeah, DZ wise, we recore basically everything to blue. I would say definitely Umbra recording, getting an Umbra set together is going to be much easier than high-end setup. The three pieces at the bottom aren't too hard. Getting a contractor as a Fox and group a piece, for instance here, to recore, that's not too hard. Unbreakable chests, Adrenaline Rush backpacks, those are basically super unicorns, because yeah, you're kind of looking for 2 stats and a talent to record them, because yeah, these would come with red cores, of course. These are very much harder pieces to get, but these could also be reds, and you would kind of be fine for like just DZ PvP and stuff. That's you don't need to be perfect, because keep in mind, I feel a lot of people overestimate how powerful people will be in the DZ. Just as many as you sometimes see random jumbled messes in Countdown, there is just as many jumbled messes in DZ, and people just run them and they don't really care that they're dying and stuff. They're just, they're having their fun, and we're giving their fun to them and sending them back to the checkpoints often. And yeah, usage-wise, this is definitely just a DZ setup. This is a build to be able to fight in the DZ against someone if need be. Adrenaline Rush Unbreakables are really good for in the DZ, and then yeah, together with all those blue cores. This is also the meta that I don't kind of like anymore. About the DZ definitely shifted to becoming a lot more blue, a lot more Adrenaline Rush, a lot more Unbreakable. That's also kind of the fights that I don't enjoy as much anymore. The time to kill has gone way up in comparison to olden times. Back in my day, we used to kill a lot faster because we would run also less red cores. But that's a history lesson for a different time. This build is well worth considering for if you want to go into the DZ and such. I'm definitely not the person to, per se, now be current upon what the DZ is and what the fights in there are. Definitely, I think Vestilence has kind of been creeping into there. I've seen people use that and stuff. But this, as just a cookie cutter build, will definitely work in there. I would be fine going into there with this. But yeah, it's really if you're only kind of considering those kind of things. And on to the last build of Character 1, which is 1.16, their last loadout slot, of course. This is especially designed for in use in Countdown, although I've used it in other places as well, and quite effectively so. This is basically PFE with Regen, together with having Vanguard and Galvanise for teammates, basically. A group support PFE Regen. It's trying to do too many things. Generally, I would recommend when you're hybridizing 2 things and you just hybridize between those 2 things. This is trying to do 3 things. It barely works out, but actually it does okay for itself. Changes wise, this mained the Scorpio. The Scorpio is our way of especially triggering Galvanize, although we have Foam as well behind me there. Yeah, the Scorpio is going to still trigger galvanized just fine. It's instead of on the 3rd shot, it's on the 4th shot, which not that big of a difference. The reload and stuff, of course, changes as well. They do kind of hurt it. But nothing else really changed about this build. We are kind of keeping it the same. It just got a refresh basically to new standards. And in game, we kind of see, as I haven't actually loaded it yet here, but we'll go to it very quickly. As we have here, it is as is on there. I don't actually have any 13s on this character on this. I do actually have 9 13s in total available, but there are on character 3 and 4 actually. This one doesn't per se need it because we're also going for the full 80%. And here we're doing it with Survivalist. And actually I'm choosing to also be Survivalist basically because we're going to apply some status effects. We're going to give our teammates basically a buff through that as well. But yeah, we're going for the full 80%, so we're kind of hitting the 72 here with 6 of these. This is also one of the few places where a chill out actually makes sense. We're using it because as we had last year a video of where and when to kind of use the chill out, or maybe it was last summer when it was last available. If you're interested into that and why you shouldn't go for a red chill out, go watch that video from the past. It's definitely not usable for that. You really only, if you're really only for protection from elite builds, basically tanky builds, it's kind of usable, or if you're using it in its capabilities here to be one of the pieces of Gila for regen. Now, of course, we're using it here to kind of be able to get this last piece in and then still hit 80 hazard protection. Crafting wise, or getting this build together wise, it's not exceptionally hard. Of course, the chill out is only seasonally available, which is now currently it is available at the when this video comes out. In the future, hopefully they will keep doing events consistently where we can get them. They've been good about it in the summertime and stuff as well, adding a few. So hopefully they'll add one like in autumn or in spring. I mean, where we can get it as well. And the other parts, of course, we are going with a points man. That's not too hard to get. A piece of Gila that we're keeping blue core, so that's not too hard to get. The pieces, improvised pieces, of course, basically always will require a bunch of optimizations. You craft these, and then you have to either optimize them up. Here as well, I've gone out of my way to kind of have the cores be the part where we can recalibrate, so we can either go with 4 blue cores or 6 blue cores as required. And yeah, Bellstone backpack as well is not per se too hard because we just need one with crit chance, crit damage to optimize up. Although, of course, we're going to spend a bunch of resources there and preferably free talents ball. Though in this case, it's kind of Galvanise is the go-to here because we wouldn't per se go with Protector or something like that. And usage-wise, this is actually one that I've been really enjoying a lot with countdowns. Not more per se than just running a red or some of the buff builds, but here and there just grabbing this, and as long as it's, for instance, not the team is already decently strong, that can work well. Also, this can work well in conjunction with a red FI because we can give blue armor, we can give bonus armor basically to allies and prevent them from getting hit in their normal armor, and that will keep up their vigilances and stuff if they have that. But also, FI buffs. And there's actually this and a FI, red FI together actually works really well together, and that's the way I've been running it quite a bit. It's not a top end build, but well worth having, and as well, this worked very well, for instance, for the recruiter fight. This is actually the build that kind of really easily got me through the recruiter fight. And made me actually not realize how much of a hassle that thing was until much later. Well worth having something like this, at least a PFE. All my characters always have a PFE. This one is maybe overkill for general use, but for especially a countdown and such, it's actually pretty useful. And to conclude this video, as we went through a bunch of builds there, of course, we basically went all the way from there to there, but there's of course way much more to go. And we're gonna do that. We're gonna go character by character as we discussed at the start, kind of like with this, and do it for the other characters as well. Although that's going to be, of course, intermittent with some other things. And yeah, the build collection has been completely updated, at least for its core parts, basically the active builds. There's still a black spot here that'll get filled up by the time we get to that character. Some of the purple builds have not been updated yet, but you know, they're not per se in the build collection. The X builds, of course, are X builds. They are builds that I no longer have per se, so they won't get updated. We'll keep them as is, just kind of for somewhat nostalgia's sake. But also some of them are kind of usable, or kind of can be gone. You can go for them if you want to. But yeah, I've at some point decided to toss them out, usually to bring something in new. Like, yeah, for instance, that Virtuoso build. And yeah, I hope you found this informative or in some ways enjoyable. I hope the format, if you did enjoy the format, do let me know. Because yeah, we went kind of in a quite a different way than we normally would, where we went, instead of just the changes, going literally build by build, and kind of also explaining what it's for and such, because I think there might be some value to that, seeing as we have so many changes as well, and most of them minor because just weapon changed and such. So yeah, do let me know if you like it this way, and also yeah, if you did like it, please do any and all of the algorithm things down below, as it's always appreciated. In the short future, we're gonna go into the rifle. Compare the rifle on, I was going to say Striker, as we did with the other ones, but it isn't. It's actually going to be in a high-end build. That table is basically done. It just needs a few hours more of work. And we'll jump into that and kind of compare rifles with talents on a build. And also, of course, as we talked about when we got there, the Lengmo Pestilence build, we're going to build showcase that pretty soon as well. And of course, future characters of this will kind of be going, and I'm kind of going to do basically one of the weapon types, as we'll go through shotguns, and or well, after rifles, we'll go to character 2, maybe the build showcase. Then after character 2, shotguns, character 3, pistols, character 4, and then so on and so on. So that's for the coming times, the intended programming, unless some weirdness gets added, of course. So I hope you join me for those. And as always, have a good night.